Welcome to the Darkstream. Voxday, voxday.blogspot.com, and Arcaven Comics. It's been a busy couple days. It's been a busy couple weeks, the holiday notwithstanding. And one of the things that I realized, one of the decisions I had to make was whether to extend my ban on talking to the media to the alternative media and to the industry media as well. And, it's not something that I necessarily wanted to have to deal with. It's not something that I necessarily wanted to have to think about. I've been in the media myself on and off since I was, 22 years old, 23 years old, something like that. And I appreciate what a lot of the people who send me requests to go on their podcast or to go on their live stream or whatever. I understand what they're trying to do. I respect what they're trying to do. Some of them are in ideological alignment with what I'm trying to do. Some of them actively support the stuff that we're doing. But the problem that I have ascertained through experience, through considerable experience, keep in mind, I have done dozens of interviews with both the mainstream media as well as with the alternative media. And there are different problems, but you run into problems nevertheless. And the biggest thing that I realized was that I was thinking about the situation solely in terms of what was good for me, my interests, and I was just assuming that my granting somebody an interview or my granting somebody the time to go on their show or whatever was a positive thing. It was a good thing. It was something that I was giving them in the same way that if I was interviewing someone else on one of my platforms, that is beneficial to me. That's how I thought about it. But what I realized recently is that that's simply not true. And if you look at what has happened to some of the people that I've talked to, specifically as a result of talking to me, there is a new standard that the SJWs are applying. And we saw it, I even wrote about it in JORDANETICS. Faith Goldie was deplatformed, and the nominal excuse given was that she was interviewed by, she didn't interview them. She was interviewed by a source or a site that Jordan Peterson and company did not approve of. And so people are now being tarred with association when they do nothing more than talk to someone in a journalistic capacity. Now, we can argue about whether that's right or not. Personally, I think it's totally ridiculous. But let's look at what happened to someone like the editor-in-chief at Bleeding Cool. Now, most of you are probably aware of this, but not all of you. I've learned that not everybody who watches these Darkstreams reads my blog. And so you just can't make that assumption. And so when you look at what happened there, here's the whole background to that. They made on Bleeding Cool, there was an offhand reference to me as a white supremacist, in addition to a couple other things that were true. The charge of white supremacy was not true. I promptly emailed the author of the piece, one Rich Johnston, and said, look, this is not true. You know it's not true. Take it down and apologize, or I'm going to make a libel complaint. Now, Rich is over there in England where they actually take libel seriously. And so he wisely took the charge down immediately. But and I think that he would have been perfectly willing to apologize or whatever. I don't think that it was just an offhand reference to him. He didn't care. He doesn't. He may not approve of me. He may not like me, but he doesn't really have it in for me, as far as I can tell. And so I when he asked and said, look, when he pointed out that this was something that was out there floating around the internet, it was something that a guy from the New Republic started back during the Rabid Puppy days. It was part of their attempt to try to discredit me during the Rabid Puppy days back in 2015. So anyhow, it's not a charge that has any staying power. It's obviously ridiculous. I have spoken out and written very clearly on the matter, not out of any intention of trying to defend myself or anything. It's just a simple and straightforward matter of fact. And so, of course they will make charges that, you're an ally of this, or you're not sufficiently inimical to that, or whatever. That's fine. They can say whatever they think. If they say, I think Vox is a furry dragonkin, I can't complain about that. They can think whatever they want. But what they can't do is say something that is flat out false. And so I am going to point out their lies regardless. And there's a difference between trying to defend yourself and cringe and saying, no, I'm not, and just saying flat out that's false. And not wasting any, not getting your panties in a bunch about it or anything like that. But just refusing to accept the falsehoods that are thrown at you. And so what they decided to do is they said, well, we'll do an interview and we'll let the readers decide. I said, fine, great, go for it. And so they did this massive interview. I mean, it was 17,000 words. I've never seen an interview this long. And it was kind of funny because it was basically the author, who happened to be the editor-in-chief at the site, laying the groundwork for that question, asking the question, and then after I answered it, then taking exception to my answer. So this is all essentially somebody who is either an SJW or SJW adjacent, trying to position himself to make it clear that he does not sympathize with me, he does not agree with me, but he considers me to be a sufficiently significant figure in the comics industry that I need to be dealt with. they need to pay attention to what Arkhaven is doing because we are doing significant things in the comics industry. So anyhow, I told him that, you can't compromise with these people. You cannot be reasonable with these people. You can't give them an inch. And he said, no, I think you're wrong, etc., etc., etc. And it turned out the piece was up for about 12 hours. It was taken down. The editor-in-chief was relieved of his duties and was replaced by someone who promptly posted an apology for having violated the internet safe space. So the interview was not beneficial to him. It was not beneficial to me because later that day, the SJWs were so inspired that they managed to put enough pressure on Indiegogo to get them to retroactively, 3 weeks retroactively, cancel a campaign that was already finished. And so now obviously, as you know, we managed to route around that like we always do. But it still created, it's created a lot of extra work for me. It's been a huge waste of time that wasn't even part of the time involved in dealing with the interview. And so who benefited from this? No one. Literally no one. Even Indiegogo is going to suffer for this because we're going to be taking them to arbitration. And if we beat them, they're going to end up having to pay out a lot of money that they already refunded. And so, that's one issue. Another issue is a lot of these individuals are quite rightly attempting to increase their exposure. When you interview somebody who is better known than you and has a bigger following, you get to introduce yourself to their audience, and sometimes those people will be willing to follow you as well. And so that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But the problem is these people have agendas, personal agendas, that even if they are ideologically allied with you, their personal agenda is not necessarily yours. And most of these people have larger egos than the norm. Most of these people are a bit more intelligent than the norm. They're probably a bit more intelligent than their fan base. People tend to, except for pop stars and celebrities, people tend to follow people that are a bit more intelligent than they are. And so it's kind of a structurally bad idea to put them in a situation where, for at least on that particular subject, they're probably not going to be the smartest guy in the room. And if they are, if that's part of what they have built their appeal on, if that is part of what they have built their self-regard on, it's just naturally going to be a uncomfortable situation. Because even if the person is somebody that is smarter than I am, if you're going to talk to me about advanced squad leader, if you're going to talk to me about Europe, if you're going to talk to me about anything from game design to 1980s arcade games, there's no way that you're going to know as much as I do in that area of my specialization. And so it's just not a good idea. And so I'm going to continue to talk to people who are authors. I have a personal relationship with those people. I know what's going on with them. They know what's going on with me. it's comfortable in a way that it just isn't with most people that are performing some sort of media function. And so, also we've got some relationships with people like Alex Jones and so forth, and and then situations like that, I'm going to continue to talk to some of those folks on a very occasional basis. So, one other thing, somebody just mentioned it. The site is kind of in what I would consider to be beta plus, but we now have a Arkhaven Comics site. If you go to arkhavencomics.com, you'll see that we are now beginning to sell the digital editions of our books and our comics directly from the site. So if you prefer EPUB, you now have a way to get them. If you prefer CBZ for the comics, you now have a way to get them. And we're going to be bringing more and more books over and more comics over as their Kindle Select term expires. We also have a blog, a comics-focused blog there. And we've got some good contributors, including the legend Chuck Dixon. That's where we're going to be posting images, new illustrations, new covers, new panels from our forthcoming comics every day. And structurally, it's very important because we now have a crowdfunding component so that we can do it directly ourselves and eliminate any potential problems with sites like Indiegogo down the road. So, when I talk to you about the importance of building your own platform, I do practice what I preach to a certain extent. Obviously, I'm talking to you on YouTube right now. We are not planning to do a video streaming channel because it's not something that is capable of supporting itself. So keep in mind that the site is brand new. Everything's brand new. And so there may be some flaws, there may be some glitches. And so be patient with it. Steve says, are you still going to meet with Owen Benjamin? I certainly will if Owen would like to do that. Let's see here. California fires are a prime example of fragility in the system due to intervention. Possibly. I think the best example of the fragility of the system due to lower average societal IQ is the collapse of the bridge in Atlanta. The U.S. is facing a serious infrastructure problem, and it no longer has the population capable of maintaining the high level of infrastructure that it previously had. Some of these other questions. There was something about Julian Assange. I find it very strange. I have found that whole Assange thing to be incredibly strange in the first place because he would have been a lot better off to simply address the Swedish situations in a straightforward manner and take his chances even with an unbiased trial or even with a biased trial, because the penalties for that sort of not rape that they were talking about charging him with are pretty trivial. So, I don't know what's going on there. I don't know why Assange was so terrified of prosecution for a relatively minor crime that he clearly didn't commit. So it may be that there's a lot more going on there than we know or than we understand. But I always thought it was very strange that he went to the UK in the first place. I mean, the UK is about the worst possible place you can go if you're trying to stay out of the clutches of the EU police. anyhow, I don't have much of an opinion other than I don't even understand what the United States could possibly legally charge him with. I don't think that he's committed any crime, and even if he had committed a crime, I don't think it's one over which the U.S. has any jurisdiction. I think it's unfortunate that that Trump is permitting this, but I have a feeling that he has significantly bigger issues to deal with at the moment. Assange was scared because Sweden would have extradited him. To what? To whom and for what? Are we talking about the original nominal crime, or are we talking about some non-existent crime that he hadn't been charged with in the first place? I mean, you guys are saying because of extradition. I know what extradition is. For what? He'd be extradited if he left the embassy to Sweden for the crime. Let's see. Assange would have been extradited to the U.S. by the Swedes. The U.S. have sealed indictments against him. Yeah. Anyhow, the embassy of Ecuador is not a was never ever going to be a safe place for him. And so Sean says, been watching this guy for a month now. One thing seems obvious. Never crossed the line of anything controversial. Sean, you're kind of a moron. I've written, 10 nonfiction books. I've written 535 columns, and I have written over 20,000 blog posts. There is absolutely no shortage of considerable controversial material there. So if you want to, follow the swastika panties who will, get attention by saying stupid things about dead historical figures, go ahead, but that's not what I do. Do you think that Assange could be part of a planned agenda and is just a distraction? Look, I think anyone who talks about distractions is stupid. Okay, the minute that I hear somebody saying it could be a distraction, I know I'm dealing with a moron. Okay, more than that, you're dealing with a cowardly moron. See, everybody's terrified to believe in anything. And they're terrified to take a position in anything because they might be wrong. So everything has to be couched in, do you think it's real, or do you think it's a distraction? From what? We know perfectly well that we don't know everything that's going on. We know perfectly well that not everything is real. So we have to consider all of these things, and there is to the extent there are distractions, it's not something that is small. A distraction is televised sports. A distraction is social media. It is not a distraction to have a journalist get himself in trouble and hole up in an embassy and have some drama. That's not a distraction from anything. Can you describe the globalist endgame as succinctly as possible? I don't quite understand what they believe the final game to be. I understand that they are trying to build a new world and build a new man and do it all without God. I don't think that they have any better a vision of how that's actually going to work than Karl Marx did when he wrote the Communist Manifesto and said, then the workers' paradise will appear. Well, how? What is the workers' paradise going to look like? How will it function? We never get that from these utopians. We never get that from these globalists. And so, somebody said New World Order. Yes, we know they want to build the New World Order. What does that New World Order look like in its fully realized form? A revival of feudalism, a single global monarch. Do they want to revive human sacrifice and build giant pyramids and tear out the hearts of virgins in order to offer them to the satanic sun? I don't know. Yeah, but you like he says, Agenda 21, Agenda 2030. Again, that doesn't say what the society actually is going to look like. All that it does is talk about a couple different policies here and there. And if you read those actual policies, you realize it can't possibly work. And so, it'll. I mean, yes, but again, I find this very frustrating sometimes listening to some of you make comments like population reduction. Okay, population reduction is not an end game. It's an action. Okay? Even if you are able to say they want to reduce the human population to 27 people exactly, that's not going to tell you how those 27 people are going to live. Buckwheat says, I'm missing the point. It is immaterial that Assange is guilty or not. Doesn't matter. If they want to kill or imprison him, they can and will. I'm not missing that point. Why on earth would you say that I'm missing that point? If they wanted to make sure that they killed him, they could, have a Pakistani dirty bomb set off outside the door and blame it on the, Al-Qaeda. They obviously don't want him dead that badly, but it's within their power. The whole boot stamping on the face of humanity, we know that. We've all read, congratulations, you read Orwell. We know that. But how does the boot get made? Are they willing to accept a decline in the economic system and the technology of the world to 1900 levels? Because that's what they're going to get. Is that's why I'm kind of curious. That's why I would very much enjoy the chance to sit down with a very high level globalist and say, just out of curiosity, how do you think this is going to work? Everything that you do, everything that you say seems to indicate that you have no interest in keeping the lights on. Do you really intend to turn the lights off and be happy that you are in charge of it all while you and everybody else are living in filth? Is power that satisfying that you are content to live in your own filth? Now, maybe they are. Maybe they are. There's numerous possibilities. Maybe they are that short-sighted. Maybe they are that indifferent. I don't know. Andrea says, I just think the elite wants to destroy white countries and white movements, weaken nationalism, and maximize the global market, the total BNP, I think it means GDP. But that's the point. Those are contradictory goals. They are, once you dumb down the population enough, you can no longer live in a technologically advanced society. You're not going to have your iPhone. You're not going to have your electricity. Where Puppy said, or as rumors have it, they have access to technology of which we are unaware. That would explain it too. But I find that very unlikely. Thule says maybe they are pure evil. Well, I think that they are. But even evil people like nice stuff. Even evil people like showers and toilets that flush. I don't know how many of them understand that that's what they are giving up. The end game of the globalists is the return of Jesus, but they don't know it yet. Oh, I think that they know it. I think that they hate it. If you look, the interesting thing is if you look at the current story of the storyline of American Horror Story, you have the witches are stopping the Antichrist, right? But we know that's ridiculous. We know that's just stupid. The witches are low-level servants of the Antichrist. So what they're really hoping for, what the message there really is they want the children of evil to try to stop Jesus Christ. And apparently they seem to think that they are going to stop Jesus Christ through stopping through perverting and ending Christianity. But it doesn't work like that. They all seem to think, and maybe it's because that's the way that the evil spirits they worship work, but they all, if you look at the stories, the fairy tales told by everyone from Douglas Adams to Neil Gaiman, they all talk about the power of the gods depending upon belief. And so maybe that's why they think that they are somehow weakening God or weakening Jesus Christ by weakening his church. But they have it backwards. They have it completely wrong. We are on God's side. We serve Jesus Christ. We worship Jesus Christ. He doesn't need us. We need him. So, it's entirely possible that on a spiritual level, they just have a complete misunderstanding, a complete failure to grasp what the state of the spiritual universe actually is. And that's right. It literally says that when Jesus returns, the whole world, or just about the whole world, will turn and curse and fight him. Well, it's not just one world government. In that sense, it's actually one world religion that's more important. That's why Jordan Peterson is so dangerous. Jordan Peterson is trying to get people to reject good. Andrea says, I think they believe they will stop a World War III. Well, yeah, I mean, that's just, I believe that some of them do. I mean, but that's just ridiculous. Just absolutely ridiculous. Um, do you think cats have souls? No, I don't. But I wouldn't be surprised if dogs do. Um, I very much follow the logic of someone who said that if heaven is a place of perfect joy, there must be dogs there, and there must be our dogs there. Um, how was your Thanksgiving? It was great. It was wonderful. Um, Turkey, pumpkin pie, pecan pie, the works. I was disciplined though, only one helping. The That's true. Demons need to be invoked. God doesn't. Um, in the last days, men will be lovers of themselves. They don't think they serve Satan. Of course, most of them don't. Most of them clearly don't think that they do, but they're kidding themselves. Um, For posterity says, at least the useful idiot level seems to think that it will lead to complete world peace and eternal love among humanity. Yeah, to be honest, in some ways, that frightens me more than the evil psychopaths um, attempting to do whatever it is they're trying to do. I mean, that I can understand on some level. I might think it's crazy. I might think it's uninformed. I might think it's wrong. But the one thing I can't possibly grasp is the idea that everything's just going to magically turn into the shiny, secular, sexy utopia that the science fiction writers of the 60s and 70s were obsessed with. I mean, it's clearly not happening. That's part of why Jordan Peterson exists, is because the atheists realized that they had nothing to offer except ultimately nihilism. That's why I call my book The Irrational Atheist, is because you have to be irrational to be an atheist and not be a nihilist. You know, that's why Sam Harris and Richard Dawkins and Daniel Dennett were putting so much effort into trying to create meaning. That's why Jordan Peterson wrote Maps of Meaning. All of these godless people have been trying to find a way to substitute something, anything, for God. And they have intellectually failed. They have absolutely intellectually failed. And so that's why you're seeing the honest incompetence of the new atheists transformed into the dishonest neo-religion of the likes of Peterson. We're going to see others too. They're all going to be the same thing in the end. But Peterson is a harbinger of the new spiritualists to come, in the same way that Dawkins or Harris really, was the first of the new atheists. Let's see. It's amazing how stupid the globalists have made people in a few generations. I think there will be more like China, and so forth. Well, it's not that the globalists have made people stupid. People have always been this stupid. They just weren't this stupid in the United States. But the United States is now much more like the world. And so you shouldn't be surprised if or that the United States now more closely resembles the normal state of the world. Do you think that any of the elites actually worship Lucifer? Yes. I have no doubt at all. Do you think there's something to the comparison of these long-standing sentiments relating to men and women? Diamonds are a girl's best friend versus a dog is a man's best friend. I think that's a little unfair to women. Certainly, my wife is every bit as attached. I would say probably more attached to the dogs than I am. She would, if I let her, she would happily swap every diamond I've ever given her, one per dog. No question about it. The video on Voxiversity when Jordan B. Peterson says it depends by what you mean by Jesus is all you need to know. That's absolutely true. And that's why I'm so disappointed in Christians who take him seriously in any way, shape, or form in a positive sense. If they take him seriously as a false prophet, that's good. But to claim that he is a positive role model in any way, shape, or form just because, he's open to the possibility of religion, it's total nonsense. Aleister Crowley was very open to the possibility of religion, and I would not recommend that people study him either. Bill Gates finally admitted his Common Core education plan has failed. Well, good for him. It's about time. You would think that somebody who is as smart and rich as he is would have been able to figure that out sooner. Wealth used to be more spread throughout the people in the U.S. That has slowly disappeared. Well, yes, of course. That's what credit does. That's why God banned usury in the first place. You accept that, you doom your society. It's that simple. Their goal is the communist sci-fi future, just like in Star Trek. Well, yeah, but I find that hard to believe, at least among the more intelligent, because it's not possible. Communism didn't even work, the first 37 times. It's not going to work any better just because you put people in leotards or unitards or whatever those outfits are called. Just because you put people in colorful jumpsuits, it doesn't mean it's going to work. The ones who they promote and give attention to now are all part of the planned agenda. They censor and hide what they do not want you to see on the internet, and social media promotes propaganda now. Yeah, there's no question. I mean, I don't even bother with social media now. They shut me down on Twitter for the first time like nearly 2 years ago now. I was back on it for a bit, and then they kicked me off again. I was just like, forget it. I don't need it. Even Hillary thinks Europe needs to reduce immigration now. Their plans are failing, and they know it. Exactly. And the ironic thing, I mean, I was talking to someone who's I would say is a classic, good bleeding heart liberal last night. They know that their ideology has failed. They know. They're still afraid to admit that people like us are right. But they have a pretty good idea. They know they're wrong. Vox, do you have globalist socialist friends? I have a few, yeah. We generally, you got to keep in mind, a lot of my friends and acquaintances neither know nor care that I'm a writer. They certainly don't know that I have a YouTube channel. This is not my life. I'm not someone who makes a living doing this stuff. And so it's, this is something that you could say to a certain extent that it's a hobby. This is what I do instead of watching television. Do you think superhero movies are a form of satanic propaganda to get people into transhumanism? No. There's very, very little. There's very little logic in that. I enjoy your content very much. You will discuss anything, and I like that. I think that's maybe giving me a little bit too much credit. There are plenty of topics that I have addressed sufficiently in the past, and I'm not interested in revisiting. But yeah, in general, I don't have any issue in dealing with this. Milo is a Zionist. Get away from him. No, Milo is my friend. Also, I support Zionism. You know, why wouldn't you support Zionism? You know, do you prefer? I mean, everybody needs a home. You know, that is the home. That is the national homeland of the Jews. Whether you like it or not is irrelevant. You know, you are the unwilling successor to Stan Lee. That may be. That may turn out to be the case. It would be funny if that did end up happening. What is good about Zionism? What is good about Zionism is that it is much, much better for a people, any people, to have a homeland rather than to be causing trouble in 50 other homelands. That's true of the Gypsies. That was true of the Mongols. You know, it's the fact that some Israelis or Israeli sympathizers behave in a way that is inimical to, say, the United States is no different than the way British agents behaved. You know, it doesn't make them unique. It doesn't make them any different. And yes, any interest that undermines the U.S. national interest, the American national interest, should be opposed. But Zionism does not do that. You know? Yeah, exactly. Zionism is Israeli nationalism. I support Israeli nationalism. I support Jewish nationalism. You know? What's your opinion on martial arts? I spent 6 years doing hard contact martial arts. What would a religion based on Jordanetics be called? Cuckology? I had a couple funny ideas that were mostly way too complicated, but I found them amusing. Let's see. Well, here's the thing. You know, if you look at the confidence and the national pride of an Israeli like Martin Van Creveld, and the difference between his perspective and the perspective of, a Jew who lives in the U.S. or in the U.K., I mean, the difference is night and day. You know, I mean, it's, why wouldn't you want? I mean, anytime it's skin in the game. It's Taleb's concept of skin in the game. People need to have responsibility in order to take longer, to have longer time preferences, and to be willing to build rather than just sweep down and harvest whatever they can. It's much better for the world that the Mongols live in Mongolia and attempt to build up Mongolian society than sweep across China and Europe, grabbing whatever they can from anybody they want. That's true of every single people, including the Americans. I mean, it would have been a lot better for the American Indians if the English and the Spanish had stuck to their homelands. Imperialism of all sorts is bad for just about everybody, including the subjects of the empire, the citizens of the empire. Have you ever talked about James Randi? I have no opinion. I mean, he's just a magician, proving that magicians can do tricks. He has not disproved the supernatural. It's not even possible logically. Is Jordan Peterson's mental illness spiritual or medical or a combination of the two? I think it's probably a combination of the two. There's definitely something spiritually wrong with that guy, and has been for a long, long time. Jews lost the homeland because they were not following God's commandments. Well, did they get it back because they are following them now? I don't know. As far as they don't deserve the nation of nations don't deserve anything. Possession is like 99/100ths of the law where that sort of thing is concerned. I mean, you could very easily say that Americans don't deserve the United States, and they're certainly in the middle of losing it. Would Martin Van Crevel suggest Israel quit taking billions of American dollars? Yes, he has done so repeatedly. And the reason that he has suggested that Israel stop taking it is because he said that it weakens them by preventing them from becoming self-reliant. He believes he's written a history of Israel. He's not just a military historian. And he's explained very clearly why taking American money and being dependent upon the American military is a really bad idea for Israel. And he's saying this as somebody who very much strongly supports the Israeli national interest. We're going to be publishing a book soon that is by a Israeli nationalist. And I think it's going to be fascinating to see how the media is going to try to figure out how to continue calling me an anti-Semite after that. But the thing is that all nationalists are intrinsically and logically allied. As long as they reject imperialism, as long as they respect that other nations have their own interests. Would you consider the Persians a nation currently without a geographic homeland? No, because the Persian nation is Iran. Let's see. Do Zionist Jews believe that the nations of Europe and American nationalism undermine their nation? In my experience, Israeli Jews usually don't, and Jews living in those countries do. Will Islam get neutered anytime soon? It's already being neutered. China is doing quite a number on it. Let's see. But their worldview is dependent on using. Anyhow, we've gotten pretty far askew here, away from the topic. So let's drop. We're not going to solve the problem of the Middle East here tonight. So, you seem like a highly Machiavellian individual. What do you make of books like 48 Laws of Power? I think that they are fairly accurate descriptions of the way that the world works. Will Christianity rise again? Yes. Is Cernovich correct to say that Trump 2020 is over? No, of course not. No, I don't have any title for future books yet. We haven't announced it yet. So, do you subscribe to salvation by faith? Yes. What was the original topic? Why I'm not doing media or alternative media anymore. So basically, with very few exceptions, if you don't know, if you don't know that you're an exception already, please don't take the trouble to invite me to be on a podcast or a live stream or any of that other stuff. If you want to know what I think, you can always show up here and ask me a question. If you notice, I'm pretty willing to take them. Justin Trudeau or JBP for Prime Minister. As bad as Trudeau is, Jordan B. Peterson would be worse. The new Arkhaven site looks good. Thank you. That's right. I'll point out that the new Arkhaven comics site is up. It's running. It's new, so there may be bugs, but you can check it out if you like. We have a new blog there, and we've actually got some illustrations of the new premium covers that are up. Thoughts on Faith Goldie? Faith Goldie is wonderful. I think she's great. I even told her that if she ever wanted to write a book, Castalia would be happy to publish it. Tara McCarthy has been considering Catholicism on her Twitter lately. Good for her. Did you have any hand in that? I don't believe so. But I like Tara. Can you please turn up audio? I don't want to blow anything out, but I actually do have some control over that. No updates on Paris riots. Alt Hero Q campaign. We're going to run a 28 days to finish off the campaign very soon. If you're aware of Trudeau's lineage, you know he's worse, much worse. I have heard about that. I'm just talking about how he's governed and so forth. I don't think Trudeau is not as smart as Peterson, and I don't think that he is as spiritually whacked out. But I could be wrong. So, do you like StarCraft? No, I always preferred Warcraft. Ironically, I was asked to write the original StarCraft novel, and they even liked my plot for it, but I turned it down, which was a really, really dumb decision on my part. So, anyhow, that's all I have for tonight. Nearly an hour, my goodness. Well, have a good evening. Check out the new arkhavencomics.com site. Don't forget that JORDANETICS is out. If you've read it, I'd encourage you to review it and have a good evening. So we will look forward to seeing you the next time on the Darkstream.